Welcome to Season 11, Episode 7 of Inside the Rookery, and today we're welcoming back Ross Payton to talk about crafting interesting locations, the places where plots take root. Welcome to the stream, Ross, again.
Yeah, it's always fun to be here. I love talking about RPGs, weirdly enough. So happy to do it with more people who are passionate about it. So yeah.
As do we. So hi to everyone in the chat. As always, pop your questions and comments in the chat. Hopefully we'll be getting raided by Lawhammer any moment now. We have got plenty of pre-submitted questions, as always, on Discord from our patrons and lovely Discord community. So we will be bringing them up. But please do pop your comments in the chat. If you're watching this after on the replay on YouTube, please remember to like and share and do all those things, like press the little bell. Right. Shall we get into it? Let's start with a general question from me. So what have you been up to on your Patreon since we last spoke, Ross? It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly when it was.
Me neither.
A flat circle.
So long.
So for the last year and a half on the RPPR Patreon, I've been focusing on creating scenarios that I do actual plays of. Because like a lot of times in the past, I would run a game on the podcast, and then people would be like, "Oh, can I get this scenario?" It's like, no, I just wrote like a few hundred words of notes and like I improvised the rest. And like, oh wait, I could just offer that on the Patreon. So I've done, and I'm very in forums, but I've released like 9 scenarios now in the last year with varying levels of like maps and art and that kind of thing. But like modern horror scenarios, I did a Mouse Ritter scenario called Gunpla Island, which was Mouse Ritters, where you're tiny little mice people and you have swords and magic. And so what if there was an island filled with Gundam model kits that got wrecked, and they figured out magic to turn these Gundam models to make them, to Ratatouille them, but so that was fun. So I've been focusing on writing scenarios and then doing podcasts of them. And that's been a lot of fun to get feedback from the community and to sort of try a bunch of really different ideas for scenario design. Yeah.
Our corner goblin, who's the production manager on our actual play Lawhammer, would absolutely love the nexus of Gundam and tiny little critters. It meets with the intersection of her interests, and I will be pointing her in your Patreon's direction soon.
In the overlap in that Venn diagram, it's just her face. Yeah.
It's just her.
Yeah, the main enemy for that scenario is a hermit crab who took all the Gunpla kits and glued it or attached it to his shell, and so he's hoarding as much of the Gunpla stuff as possible. So you have to defeat him to get access to the Gunpla magic.
Important question in chat. Got one question. Which Andy has the best beard?
You're
obviously, Andy. I'm gonna say my Andy.
Your Andy
you are too.
Mine gets curly and it goes like sideways, and I look like like an anthropomorphic hamster, so I have to keep trimming it down. So
Whereas when Andy's gets long, I can plait it like he's an actual,
a dwarf.
Dwarf, ancient warrior. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the chat about making interesting locations for the Lawhammer lot that just raided us. That's what we're talking about today, where your plots can take root. So Roderick asks, what's your to-do list for making an interesting location? Where do you start? Or do you not have a to-do list, and do you just go by vibe writing, I guess?
Well, I mean, obviously it's a little contextual based on like what kind of RPG you're doing. But I think the first thing I think of is actually scale. Because you want a location that you can have an interesting story in that doesn't get bogged down with logistics. So like if you're doing like the standard, like find the MacGuffin, the treasure hunt kind of scenario, like a mansion or a large building like that would be potentially a really good location, but like the side of a mountain or like an entire would not be a good location because like a lot of that scenario is going to be just the logistics of climbing up and down a giant mountain, right? So you want something that you can have like an interesting story that the players can travel between different locations without getting bogged down with like, oh, well, we need to sleep, we need to rest, we need to refuel or whatever. So I think that's sort of the first thing, because a lot of people pick locations that are also too small or too big for this. And and then one thing you want to do is think about theme. Like treasure hunt pairs very well with mansion because who owns mansions? The wealthy, and so you could talk a lot about themes like that. So that's so theme and scale and just the practical considerations are what I view first, because so those are the top two considerations. I think that's what a lot of people get is they pick locations that are too big or too small, like and you need to think about like that sense of space where you can move through and have interesting encounters and challenges without the Gygaxian thing of like 50 goblins are in this room and there's a mummy in the next room, like a dragon next. Like, where are they eating? Like, where are they getting water? This doesn't make sense,
And in that context, we just have to take a moment to consider the series Delicious in Dungeon and how that addresses the issue of who eats what and where and when, and treats the dungeon as a full ecosystem, which is excellent. I want to ask Andy Lees from a player perspective, if you think back over the years that you've been role-playing, well, we've been role-playing together a long time, too many, maybe don't dwell. Like, what locations jump out to you as memorable? I'm really curious to see if it's the same ones that will jump out to me. So let's.
Interesting. I mean, it's hard, right? Because obviously the things that stick out most to me are like the character beats and clashes.
Yeah.
But some of them are tied. Like what's the name? There's a Withrop adventure from second edition where it's like it's a dungeon, but it's like an inverted pyramid. It's the undead one. It's the one where your character, we got there, I thought to kill the vampire and you pledged loyalty instead. That one.
Is it
remember that one? That moment of betrayal?
That. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. Or when we raided in Vampire, when we raided the nuclear reactor at Chernobyl. That was quite memorable. Yeah.
I was going to say the nuclear reactor, Hapimeses' tomb, which was a tomb in Egypt that was all like things where we had to solve puzzles and not do certain things. And then the one I was going to mention was the one that's in second edition Warhammer Ashes of Middenheim, where you have to go down, the very first adventure is going underground, and slowly through the course of the adventure, if you happen to be mapping it like I was, you come to a horrific realization about the shape of the tomb that you're in. And we only got that realization because I was making my character was literally, and Lindsay was making a bad map, and that was like something Russell like emerged out of the construction that you would not have got if the GM had just slapped a map down and been like, this is what you're investigating today.
One of my every year there's a shotgun or the shotgun scenario contest for the Delta Green community, which is write a complete scenario in 1,500 words or less. And one year I did I made a dungeon call and I called the scenario Bestow, and you could pull it up, and it was set in an art museum, but like because of weird Cthulhu mythos magic, it was a hypercube. And so I had a hypercube map that I found online. And so basically you go north into one door, but if you go back the same way, you'll go into a different room. And it's very convenient. It's a fourth dimensional object in three-dimensional space, so like it's very confusing unless you have a very good map. And of course I don't tell the players this when they go in, and so the players are trying to feudally map this dungeon, and that people really like that. So like there's a lot of things you can do with an interesting location. But
thank you so much for the super chat, Ricky. One of our favorite locations we made was for a Star Wars campaign. It was a Lucra Hulk ship that had been converted into a mobile black market with a full army of battle droids acting as enforcers. That's quite, I think, in Star Wars RPG, that could be quite evocative because most of us will have that background knowledge of the Star Wars films where the ships and the architecture are so rooted in a particular style that you could really imagine that your players could really grasp onto Star Wars.
100%. When Andy was running the Star Wars game for us, remember we were like raiding it wouldn't be was it Star Destroyer or a Venator class, like whatever it was, but we were raiding it, and it was, as soon as you started describing the corridors, you were there. You're like, oh yeah, I know that. I understand that. I grasp it. Yeah.
I love the name Lucre Hulk. That's such an evocative name, and I
Yeah.
looked it up. It's like, what is this? I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, and it's the Trade Federation one that they blow up in the beginning at the end of Phantom Menace. So it's like it's that, and then of course there's these great cross section diagrams of it you can find online. So it's like, oh yeah, no, that's a great place for an adventure. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, oh, Lucre Hulk. Yeah, that's I love a good name. I love a good fantasy.
I hadn't encountered that before, but I guess it says what it is on the tin. Okay, so here's another question from the chat. Most noble and divine Ross Patron and Rookery crew, with a setting as Titanic as the Horus Heresy, 30k, where would the best place be for the plot to take root, took root?
And then it says Terra, curse you, YouTube. In another comment.
Take root on Terra.
Finish writing. Okay. Yeah, I guess. Well, yeah, if you want to finish the question, maybe. But I mean, I'm not a huge 40k fan, but I have read some lore on the Horus Heresy, and apparently, like Terra itself is the Terra Palace is actually like a giant city. It's like a country. It's the size of a country, right? Like there's hundreds of millions of people or billions of people living there, and so they have crime and gangs and like. It's like any other hive city in 40k. So I'd said something there because like you're at the seat of the Imperium or whatever, but like you still have all this crime and poverty and heretics running around. But you could see a custodes walking around. You have the high and the low together. So that would be my pick.
Yeah. Secondhand Samurai suggests Mars. What went on there is so interesting. Personally, I would suggest, but as always, it's because I read the question wrong. And Titanic jumped out before Horus Heresy, so I would name a ship something like, I don't know, the Titanicus Eternal, and then I would literally play out the film Titanic with maybe a couple of Primarchs, but like the ship is like sinking in the warp, it's breaking apart, so there's like an end date for this terrible thing that's going to happen, and it would play on all of the
and it is the reason
Titanic
Horus rebels because Sanguinius wouldn't let him climb on a door.
Yeah.
I love that. That would be awesome. Ship all the Primarchs. Doomed love.
Yeah, I do ship all the Primarchs. But yeah, you could, because it just sounds like, I don't know, the Titanicus Imperialis. It just sounds like a 40k name.
It could be a rogue trader ship on a cruise.
Exactly.
Ferrying a bunch of nobles from one planet to the other. And oops, there's a Wartburg.
That's the thing with 40k, isn't it? Is the scale is so big that it like everything, like, you think, oh, we'll just set it on a ship, but that ship is the size of London. So then within it, you've actually got like towns within this ship because it's so damn big. But
that's no iceberg, it's a Primarch, or just Primarch dead ahead.
Perfect.
Oh, apparently Titanicus is a book, so presumably someone's already thought that it sounds pretty 40k.
Well, because it's also like aren't the Titans?
Oh, the elder.
Oh
Titan.
yeah, the big mecha that they have. And they're Titans. I don't know. It's probably Adeptus Titanicus or something like that. Pseudo Latin.
I think that was the name of the original game from, again, too many years ago that I'm not going to think about.
So it was. Okay, so Lawhammer, it is. Andy Law has spoken from the chat. I presume it's him manning the Lawhammer chat. We old, yes, we is. Okay, so Martine asks, how can you use locations to drive or reinforce the narrative rather than simply serving as a backdrop?
Yeah, so every location has like cultural themes built into it, right? When you say like a shopping mall, you think of consumerism, you think of capitalism, you think of all of the alienation and a million other themes, right? And there's movies, and so any kind of location you can just free associate themes with it. So if you pick a theme, then you can sort of think of locations that are either highly associated with it or like the exact opposite of it. So like if you were doing something like a religious theme scenario, then like a shopping mall would be an interesting contrast, right? Like a cult in a mall store, like that's very subversive. And that's very, oh, okay, I want to see what this is about. And so without examples, it's kind of hard to go after, but like think every place that there's nothing that's like totally politically neutral, right? Everything has connotations, everything has cultural context in it. And so think about that context and sort of work from there. And that's how I approach it. So if I want to emphasize a particular theme, I think about like what kind of places resonate with that theme, and kind of go from there. So yeah.
And Roderick asks, after creating a good location, how do you avoid railroading?
So yeah, this is more like spatial scenario, like dungeon design kind of stuff. But like, you want to, of course, the first person you should look at is Janelle Jacquez, the very influential game designer who created some of the first like mega dungeons and sort of like let's see, the Thracian dungeon, or let's see here, Caverns of Thracia for Judges Guild, and she did art for a lot of video games, and but like her dungeon design was like to create an open space that was a series of spaces that had multiple entrances and exits and secret entrances and exits, so that you could approach it from any angle. Like what you want to avoid is like a linear thing, right? Like to avoid a literal railroading where there's only one or two paths through it. And so that's look at how real spaces are built. Like real buildings have like lots of entrances and exits usually because people need them in a variety of ways. Even in like a suburban house, there's windows, right? Because we need places to get out in case there's fire, your fire safety codes. So, and also think about how people use them and how buildings and spaces changes over time. You know, people might the history of a building or a place sort of informs how that spatial awareness is built. You know, like someone buys a house or you know, someone builds a castle, lives in it, but then they leave or they get killed off by a plague or a war or whatever, and then other people move in and they make changes to the castle, and then like erosion happens or animals move in and burrow under it, or so I think the main thing is to look at really good dungeons and adventures and see how they kind of design them and use that as a guidepost. But think about like, you want to have multiple entrances into any given space. Aside, if you make something very linear, make it very secret or optional, or like that's the point. That's the difficulty, is that there's only one way in or out. But the default should be like should be like multiple ways in and out of a structure, and multiple ways to navigate it. And give players like the sort of the video game principle, like in Metroidvanias, where there's like some entrances and exits. Some pathways are only accessible if you have certain skills or abilities, like, you know, put in places to climb up, or if your game has magic, ways to fly up, or, you know, spider climb, or ways to swim, or ways to detect secret doors and that kind of thing. So that's my sort of overview on that. But yeah, look at there's a lot of thought on good dungeon design, and it starts with her, Janelle Jacquez, and go from there. But yeah.
That's just made me think of something that I think is quite interesting in what you touched upon, and that is like the historical architecture of a building and how it changes. And like I've been on a tour of Child & Co. Bank in Fleet Street, and that was founded in 1664. And now when you go down into the basement, like 2 levels down, that's where the Fleet Street was when that bank was built. And now it's like 2 whole levels above where the street level is. And I think that could be really interesting if you had a game with a group who were up for it, to do like adventures through time. So adventures in that location when that level was the original street, and maybe they don't realize that, and it could introduce quite a bit of confusion until they worked out that they were going through a building's like iterations over time. But I just like, I couldn't believe how low it was. And like, you kind of know that, right? Because in Jorvik they unearth like the Viking city underneath Jorvik, but you never you don't really feel like it's something that happens just on a street you happen to be on at that moment.
Mhm.
Well,
I mean, I live in Edinburgh, so like we should know, but
well, I was going to say, have you been to the Real Mary King's Close? Have you been there?
oh yeah, yeah.
Because that's like that, but even more so. So again, that's a tourist attraction on the Royal Mile for anyone who's not from Edinburgh. And you kind of go in to the front, and then you go down and down and down and down, and I think it's about 6 stories down,
Yeah,
and then you walk
creepy.
out, and that's where the Royal Mile used to be. Like again, 400 or 500 years ago, and you look up and you see like all of the tenement sides that are then the same
creepy.
buildings that then carry on kind of up at the street. It's
And Secondhand Samurai suggests that factions are also a good cheat code for making locations adventures a wild card. It makes them never the same, even if the furniture stays the same.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the principal things of RPG design. When in doubt, just make this scenario Yojimbo, like a scenario where, like, you know, in Yojimbo, if you're not familiar, is a Kurosawa samurai film that is actually based on or inspired by a noir detective novel called Red Harvest. But the idea is like the main hero comes into town. There's 2 gangs fighting over this town, and the main hero plays each gang against the other. So like in RPGs, you have 2 groups of factions or more that are maybe opposed to each other, and the players like try to get them to fight each other instead of the players having to defeat all of them. And so like, yeah, that's a great scenario design principle. But like for locations, yeah, like each faction, you know, when you take over a space, when you live in a space, you change it. You make accommodations to suit how you use that space. And so like once the original owners of the castle die, the people move in. It's like, well, we're taller, we're smaller, we're going to change the doorways, we're going to change that tapestry sucks, let's put a new tapestry on here, you know, let's we need a ritual chamber, okay, we'll clean out this bedroom, that's our ritual chamber now, you know. Yeah.
And do you prefer like maps that your players and you can see that are out on the table? Do you prefer the entire like theater of the mind and they can just construct it in their own heads? What's your preference for when you're a GM, when you're a player, or any other role?
I've been leaning more towards giving the players a map to refer to, because I don't like the one thing I years ago would do is the whole like you are in a tunnel 100 feet long and then like describing a space verbally and having the players try, and like the challenge was the players trying to make an accurate map based on that. And like I just that has lost its appeal when there's video games with auto mapping features, right? You know, I don't like I don't need that in my life. So I like giving players a map so they have some idea of what the space is like, or it's theater of the mind. So it depends on how important the space is to the scenario. Like if it's a very like location based and the space is important. Like one of the scenarios I designed last year was set. It's actually in the Labyrinth Signal PDF, is set on this based on this theme park I visited in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains. And it's kind of like gold rush prospector, you know, 19th century kind of theme. But like there's a place at the bottom of this hill or this small mountain. And then there's like a gondola system to take you up to the actual park. And the park's on the top of the mountain with like roller coasters and Wild West rides and that kind of thing. And so for the survival horror thing, it's like the first thing the players have to do is find gas to start up the generator, get the gondola to go up the mountain. Otherwise, it's a long and difficult climb and they have to go to the top of the mountain. That's where the main problem is that they have to go deal with. And so I gave players maps for that, so they understood like there's 2 places and you need to like figure out how you want to get up to the important location. And so that was, and there are some things on those the main things, the player maps you want to design so they don't reveal all the secrets, right? Like there's a secret GM version that has all the cool stuff on it, and the players get to figure out where those, you know, booby traps are. So yeah.
Yeah, and Andy Law, our GM, has used like different methods for that, be it like card that looks like a room on one side and you flip it over and it's got the secret things on it, or you're just taking it off. I think that can be really like good fun to do that and avoid the question. Like always the one, I'm sure it's always me, that's like, wait a minute, where am I? Like, where is everyone?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That confusion
it's
is
you,
really,
isn't it, Andy?
It's me. It's this guy with aphantasia who genuinely struggles when everybody's describing. I got nothing. I've got no idea. Can somebody draw that for me? I don't.
Yeah. Where am
although
I?
I've weirdly, the ones that I've found often most effective, because that thing you were saying, Lindsay, about if you can see the whole map, that's problematic, and then you have to start getting into like covering the map with things and moving it. I remember for a while when you guys had that glass hex
Oh, yeah.
table on your coffee
Yeah.
table, and he was just drawing it with whiteboard pens. And that was
It was
actually
so
quite
cool.
useful because it didn't need to be neat, but it just needed to convey the information. And then he was able to
Yeah.
very much go, boom, now there's a wall of fire there. And you're like, oh, God damn it. So, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Okay, so Master of Sock Puppets asks, what's your favorite ever TTRPG location?
So I love me some mega dungeons, and there have been so of all time that would be tricky because I know because there's a biasy reason. It's got like books I've more recently read or played through. I'm more inclined to like. So like last year on the Patreon we did this deep dive review where we went through this book called The Parthenogenesis of Hungry Hollow, which is a adventure for liminal horror, which is like this modern horror RPG that uses OSR types rules, very rules like and very much like civilians getting caught up in horror movie type situations. And it's this small town that's slowly being infiltrated by this cult that has kind of a bee theme. Like they have these monstrous bees that sting, or like you get stung by the bees and you get implanted, and like a bee grows in your brain, and they take you over, and it's real body horror type stuff. But like they have a map of the entire town, and every single building in the town is described. And so you can just roll into town, and here's the plot hook of your friend invited you here and now they're missing, and everyone's acting real weird. And there's like a timetable, like there's 3 days until the big evil, there's so much time before the big evil thing happens. I mean, obviously the GM can change that, but like the players, it's a sandbox thing. Like you just talk to whoever you want, go to wherever building you want, and the GM can just flip to that low number and be like, okay, well, here's what's in this building, and here's who's there, and like there's random encounters and stuff like that. And so I really like that 360 completeness. Like you just, once the players are in the middle of that location, any direction, any angle they go to is covered. So I really admire that. And the book is only like 120 pages. Like it's a pretty thin, like concise book. So I am reading the One Rings Moria, and I really like that too. I think that's a really by Gareth Hanrahan. I think that's a really good hallmark of how you do big location mega dungeon kind of designs. So I'm gonna go with Hungry Hollow right now because I read it recently. I was like, "Ooh, this is neat." But yeah.
Feel like dying malls or shopping centers, as we would call them, are really good liminal spaces. There's one in Dundee where both my kids are at uni, and whenever my eldest goes there, she calls me first to warn me she's going to the liminal space that is the Wellgate, and calls me when she gets back to tell me that she's safe, she's returned from the Wellgate. Yeah. It's so weird though. You go in there, right? And it's got like these banners, like it's the best thing ever, that they've got a rolled up ice cream stall. Never heard of one of those before or since, but there's like posters everywhere. It's just a really weird space.
And then it's got, obviously, is it the top floor? It's got the old clock. So it's got this clock with these like big giant like animals that like move.
It's got like a lion and a unicorn. It's weird.
And like the rest of the center, obviously the bones of the center were built 60s, I think, same time as the Overgate. But inside, it's been renovated about 3-4 times.
It's just weird.
Like just doing a veneer, but that clock has kind of remained like it is. When I was a kid, I was convinced it was haunted. I was convinced there was something, some ancient evil inside that clock. I'm going to give a shout out. I've got two. I've got an honest answer and then a shilling answer. And the shilling answer for my favorite TTRPG location is The Well of Bones by Rookery Publications, which of course I love more than anything else. Having had a lot of fun writing that. But I've got a really fond, and I don't know if Andy's ever going to take us there in Lawhammer, but I have a lot of fond memories for Castle Drachenfels. And I have to stress, the OG first edition Castle Drachenfels, with no disrespect to the creators who made it, is not a great location. It is a potentially great location, because Drachenfels is such an interesting character as this kind of immortal creature that like can use chaos but isn't of chaos, and isn't undead but is eternal, and has done all of these unspeakably evil things and yet is somehow urbane and kind of sophisticated. And I think there's real potential in that as a location that is like a millennia long like living museum to evil, which is essentially what it is. And I think like there's certain rooms in it, like there's a room around his poison feast where he, you know, sort of famously invited all, I'm not going to be evil, I'm going to be good, and invited all these other nobles in and then poisoned them all, but in a really horrific way. And like that room was really evocative because it spoke to the story of why this character was so evil and was so reviled for so long. So yeah, those are mine.
Good answers.
Yep. What's my favorite? I think I've actually covered some of my favorites earlier, so we won't go back to them. But the follow-up question to that is, and what's your TTRPG location, White Whale? What location for any fictional world would you like to write up for a TTRPG? And remember, pop your favorites in the comments if you like, and I will bring them up on screen.
So I've already started on this, and on the Patreon actually, and this is sort of the inspiration for my work in progress action horror RPG Labyrinth Signal. Is I wanted to, like I said, I love mega dungeons. I love a good mega dungeon, but one thing I noticed was that they're all fantasy, or there's a couple of sci-fi ones. You know, like Mothership has one called Gradient Descent. You know, and 40K Space Hulks and stuff like that. And of course, mega dungeons are a dime a dozen in fantasy. But there's not really one set in the modern day, which kind of makes sense because there aren't real life mega dungeons, you know. But like, what if there was? And so like I posited like a little pocket universe that was accessible on Earth through portals on various places on Earth or through ritual spells. And what if there was a mega dungeon that you could access from Earth and that had been around for hundreds of years? Because I really like in good mega dungeons, like I read through Stonehell, which is an OSR system neutral mega dungeon. They talk about like it was built by these guys, but then they left it, and then these guys came in, and then these guys came in. And so like there's history throughout this mega dungeon. And so I like, what if there was real life history where like 300 years ago, these French philosophers, these who believed in the commune showed up, and then something bad happened to them, and then some 19th century occultists, you know, Aleister Crowley types came in, and they didn't like the services. They dug down, and they built like a subway. They had portals to every continent on Earth, and we're going to be, it's going to go great, and then something horrible happens to them, and then like every generation people dig further down and they start building different weirder stuff. And so like you have history all the way from 300 years ago to the Cold War to the modern age to like the 1980s Silicon Valley stuff. And that's so like a modern day mega dungeon. That's my White Whale, and I want to write it. So I realized I need to write my own rule system for it because I didn't see any that were really satisfying to me. And I've done some art for it. I've done some outlines of it of like what I want to do, but I realized I need to perfect the system. But that hopefully in a couple of years or whatever, I can sit down and write it out. I like, my idea is that there's a GM book with all the secrets, and then there's a player book that's like, people have been exploring this for decades. So people put together a little guidebook or like tips and notebooks, and like anytime somebody else stumbles into the secret, oh, you want to explore this? You can make money and find magical secrets and all this other stuff. Here we have a library. There's one book in the library. You can't check out it, but you can take notes in it. And you give players this player handout book that has rumors and gossip about it. And the players flip through and say, oh, we want to check out to see if this is real. And then the GM's like, oh, well, that's the adventure. And that's the campaign, is the player book and the GM book. And like, so that's my big White Whale. And I hopefully I'll be able to do it, but I need to get the RPG written first. So yeah.
Yep. So Mark says the Piranesi pocket dimension thing would be good. I suppose the Guardians of Inn and Stygian Library are kind of that already.
You read Piranesi, Lindsay?
No.
It's by Susanna Clarke, who did Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. It's really, really good. It's like a big house that's like flooded and is like slowly flooding more, and your protagonist like it lives there but has no memory of how they got there, and it's all to do with like pocket dimensions and stuff like that. It's a beautiful little novel, and it would be a really, really interesting space to kind of write up. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I've had long had the idea of doing a set of locations that are all based on the locations that are in like the classics of English literature, like
Mm.
Thornfield Manor from Jane Eyre, like Thrushcross Grange, and cross-referencing them with the actual books to work out what the maps should be and having the end. And but I don't know what kind of game they would be for. I don't know what adventures you'd be having there. And part of me wants to do like a different one for each one. So maybe
Mhm.
like one's a zombie adventure and one's, I don't know, haven't really thought the whole thing through yet. I've thought
I
the whole
mean,
franchise through. So once we've done houses, we're going to go on to boats like the
nice.
Hispaniola from Treasure Island and stuff. So, but yeah,
Yeah, because I mean, the obvious house to do is Dr. Jekyll's house from Jekyll and Hyde.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
then
Or,
that kind of adventure begins to write itself because you've got the
yeah,
bifurcated house with the front and the back and the seedy alley and
yeah. Or like the one from Rebecca, that's like really
yeah,
forms like a
Manderley,
key part
yeah,
of Rebecca. Yeah, Manderley. Yeah. So
yeah,
I think there's so much scope there to do it. I just need to persuade the person who maps things for me to do them and persuade the
yeah,
person who reads lots of books to me to for me to research it.
yeah. I'm on board with this plan, Lindsay, because
Yes.
just from a producing perspective, most of those books are out of copyright now.
Well,
So
exactly. That's why
no
that's the
licensing fee
original.
required.
So
Yep.
that's the original reason I picked them. I wanted to do books that people, houses that people would know, but it had to be things that were out of copyrights. And then I
Yeah.
was like, well, there's so many like really good houses that form the basis of those classic novels. They just seem to be really rooted, a lot of them, in place and time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So are there, Ross, are there any common mistakes you see GMs make when they're trying to build interesting locations, but they actually end up like stifling play?
Yeah, I think some of it is it goes down to the core mistake of going too big or too small, right? Like either the location and not just spatial, but like in terms of writing, like describing the place, like you can make the mistake of like over describing something and under describing something. Like I remember I was running this fantasy campaign, Iron Heroes, and the players were trying to find the bad guy. The bad guy fled, and they were trying to figure out where they fled to. So, well, there's three places the bad guy could have fled. There's this place in the desert, and then there's this place out on a mountain, and then there's this place that's like it's a giant cavern, but it opens up to the air, and so like it's like a tunnel. It's like it's the one you're describing more. It's that one. It's that one. It's like okay, yeah, it is that one that I based on a real place in Vietnam, and so I think you can get too in love with a location because like it is a setting, it is a backdrop, it is supposed to enhance the actions, the play of the main characters, right? So if you over describe something or under describe it, if you over describe it, you know you're making putting too much spotlight on it, not the players. If you under describe it, the players are confused or they don't know where they are. There's nothing special about it. So you know, and get too coy or too cute with like custom mechanics for a location. Yeah, like it's learning that fine line of just a little enough to add spice to the game without bogging it down, but also you need something, otherwise it's bland. So it's like part of that, like learning your players and learning what really works to keep the game flowing. So a couple of cool details, one or two custom rules, and kind of let the players' imagination do the rest. But don't like spend 10 minutes describing how this place is unique, unless it's really, really important to your game, unless that's like a clue. Like this, the architecture of this place is so weird. It's, you know, it's like you're doing a House of Leaves style mystery. Then like, yeah, that makes sense. But otherwise, yeah. So those are the mistakes I see.
I've got some questions about Labyrinth Signal in more detail, but first, can you just, Martin asks, can you just tell us a bit more about Labyrinth Signal? Where does Martin get it? I think
Yeah.
you've got some links that Andy will bring up.
Yeah, it's on the RPPR Patreon right now. I released a beta last summer. Labyrinth Signal is a modern day action horror role playing game that's sort of leaning towards more the OSR or NSR, like in terms of rules, like because I wanted to emulate the style of survival horror, especially games that are more action oriented, like Alan Wake, Silent Hill, players where people are not like special agents per se, but they are fighting monsters instead of like investigating mysteries. Like there would be mysteries and of course, but like the primary thing is to have action without but still being horror, which you can do, but it's tricky. And so the mechanic I'm playtesting, I'm working right now is a combo mechanic. And so the players start with this combo meter. It goes from 0 to 6, like a D6. And every time you attack and miss, every time you get attacked, you gain points on your combo meter. You can also gain combo points by taking particular actions, and then you can spend those combo points to do like multiple attacks at once, or guarantee you guaranteed hit. You don't have to roll your d20 to hit, or do more damage, or reduce the damage you take, or do multiple things if you built it up enough. And the idea is to give players a bit of power to fight back against the monsters, but not make it a power fantasy. Because if you just give them like shotgun +5, well, they're just better now. But those combo meter points are temporary, and like you have to re-earn them in order to use them again. So because like in a fantasy RPG game, you're questing to get a magical sword or an item that'll just make you more powerful. In a survival horror game, you're questing to get some item that'll unlock the door to your to the ritual chamber where you can remove the curse. You know, you only need it for this very specific plot reason. It's not going to make you a more powerful person. It just lets you do the thing you need to do. And that's sort of the vibe I'm trying to go with Labyrinth Signal. Modern day horror survival action, or survival horror action is sort of and dungeon focused too, like location based. I've released 2 place test scenarios for it, one in the beta and another one called Alienation of the Flesh, and they're Alienation of the Flesh, and they're both location based adventures where you're fighting monsters and trying not to die horribly.
I think you've kind of answered this question. So with Labyrinth Signal, are you approaching the location design differently? Is the game built around place first or something else? So it does sound like it is rooted in place, especially some of the influences you said, where like Silent Hill, where you very much that evokes the place that you play in. When you certainly does when I think of that game.
Yeah, exactly. And like there's another survival horror game I played last year called Crow Country, which is set in an abandoned theme park. And obviously I went to a theme park, and that's why I set it at this Colorado Rockies Mountain Gold Rush theme park, where there's a gondola you have to take to get to the actual theme park. I'm like, oh, that's terrifying. If there were monsters, if you had to like do this at night and there were monsters below you waiting to hope that the cable snaps, and that kind of thing. So I mean, like there's so many interesting locations. Like a lot of horror now is based on location, like analog horror, liminal spaces, as you mentioned. There's the back rooms, which is there's going to be a A24 film of the back rooms coming out. And there's a lot in urban exploration, and of course we can go all the way back to like Marble Hornets and Slenderman, because people urban exploring into these abandoned locations. I think a lot of we're getting, I think in contemporary we're getting like more like isolated, and also like stationary. Like we're not traveling as much, we're not going to different places, we're remote working, or we're working at home, or we're doing things online instead of going out. And there's more and more locations that are sort of off limits and off access. Like we don't have public spaces as much anymore, and those places that we do go to are more surveilled, or shopping malls are closing down and becoming a weird abandoned horrific spaces. We're doing our shopping at home now, like and so like any space that is not our home is like getting weird and scary and isolated. So
and there's also that advent of, I can't remember what the word is, it's something architecture. It's not like unfriendly or something like that.
Hostile.
So it's things like hostile architecture. So it's noises that only teenagers can hear that drive them away. It's benches that you can't actually sit down properly on. You just have to like kind of perch yourself on, because they don't want homeless people sleeping there. Like spikes so pigeons can't land, just like that whole thing. I feel like public spaces, as you say, stuff like that would have been unthinkable maybe. I mean, there's always been spikes on fences, right, to stop you going where you shouldn't. But I feel like taking benches and making them have holes in them so you can't lie on them takes it to a whole new level.
Oh yeah, no, it's awful. And like there's there's all kinds of horrific uses of architecture. There's and since 2020 there's like this idea of quarantecture, building architecture to like help quarantine people and isolate them. And so like spaces there's more and more scary spaces and locations now than there ever have been. So and like think about how the countryside, rural areas, even suburban areas are becoming like depopulated, you know. There's so many abandoned small towns in America, and I imagine there's probably a good number in most industrialized country. Like I went to Japan on vacation a couple years ago, and they have these scarecrow villages where everyone's moved away except for like small like I went to Nagoro Scarecrow Village, where every time somebody died or moved away, the remaining residents started making a scarecrow of them and placing them out there. So like there's no kids in there, so the school is just a museum filled with hundreds of these scarecrows that are like made from fibers. Yeah. And I thought it was touchy, but everyone else was terrible. We also went in a bright sunny day, so like maybe at night it's a little
that's horrifying.
Yeah, no, it's you know, or a testament to like, you know, a memorial for those who've gone, you know, I don't know, but like I thought it was neat. And yeah, that's
both. It can be both.
It can be both. It can be both. They just want to hug you at night. It's fine. You know, so and you can see the monkeys and the tanuki like walking around, you know, it's already being reclaimed by nature. So yeah.
Mark says recent surge in folk horror is foregrounding place lore, do we think? And Scarecrow Village, totally folk horror. And one kernel, when I hear abandoned places, I think Centralia or Centralia. I don't know what that is. Does someone know what Centralia
I know
is? And Chernobyl.
Yeah, Centralia is in the United States. I believe it's in Pennsylvania. It's cited as one of the inspirations for Silent Hill. Essentially, it was a coal mining town, and there was a coal vein under the town, or near, like under the town. And in a mining accident, the coal vein was ignited, and it's going to burn for the next like 200 or 300 years. So they had to abandon the town because all these fumes were coming out of it. And, you know, who knows when the ground is going to collapse from like this underground fire that is going to be raging for decades or centuries. But like people still go there. Like most of the houses are still there, but it's just overgrown and nature's reclaimed it. But like you can still see columns of mist, you know, like this toxic fog coming out of it, seeping out of the ground.
We actually talked a little bit about that last week with Jendia Gammon, where we were talking about, well, I was talking about how they built so many hydroelectric dams in Scotland in the 60s and 70s. And then, of course, they flooded the lochs. And so when the water level is really low, you can see the tops of the houses because there used to be villages there and all the people were forcibly relocated. So yeah, there's like haunted, hidden villages under the lochs.
Sure. A similar thing happened in the U.S. Actually, my father sued the federal government to stop the construction of a dam, and he failed. They built the dam, but like they had to move several towns worth of people to make this lake and Lake of the Ozarks, and Truman Dam was built. So there's a lot of folk horror. There's a movie with a similar basis. It's like a French horror film where they shot it all underwater. Let's see, house. The Deep House, which is like a haunted house, but like it's under a lake. And so two divers with really custom diving gear and lots of really good cameras, it's found footage, dived to this house that's 100 feet below the surface. And bad things happen because the ghosts don't breathe, apparently. So, yeah.
I was going to say, like in Cyprus, I don't know if either of you have ever been to Cyprus, but there's lots of abandoned stuff there from when Turkey invaded in 1974, and it's still like split between the kind of like the Greek bottom half and the sort of Turkish north half. But there's a really complicated legal situation around that, which means that so like in the south, there are people who are in houses that used to be owned by people who were who had gone out to the Turkish side, so they've been given those houses by the government, but legally don't own them. So should the original owners come back, they could kind of lose them. That's weird. Lindsay was there twice. Talk about horror. But then equally, there's the similar sort of situation on the north as well, and that's led to like multiple villages that have just been left, but it's more recent. so like I'm used to in Scotland we've got lots of villages like that from the Highland clearances from like 300-400 years ago, but this is much more recent, and because it's not far enough away to be properly reclaimed by nature, because it's on reasonably busy roads and they're like just small villages that are maybe just 2 miles away from a place that's totally thriving. It's odd. It's somehow more eerie because it's less abandoned, even though there's nobody living there anymore. And then there's the city of Famagusta, which is being sort of set up to be this kind of great resort city in the kind of 1970s, and was kind of attacked and shelled during it. So you go there and there are these like 1970s style big, high-rise buildings, but half of them have been kind of like blown off, but then it's just been left. So it's not been demolished, but it's also not been repaired.
Weird.
You just have like you look along and you see into all of what would have been the hotel rooms and kind of everything, but they're all still there. It's a profoundly unsettling place to visit, Famagusta.
Sign me up. Sounds great. I'd love to check it out.
This is slightly on a tangent but related to what we're talking about today. So Beer asks, what is the key to GMing a social heavy RPG? We might not get fully into this today. We can always do another stream on that full topic of social heavy versus combat heavy. But do you tend to play run RPGs where there's a lot of character interaction and a lot of chat, or are you more monster, dice roll, fight, move on?
Definitely more towards the social role-playing thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I tend to play games like Delta Green where combat is extremely lethal and pretty swift usually. But I mean, obviously it depends, if I do, there are times I want to do action and lots of fighting and cool scenes like that. But I think the key in social heavy RPGs is to make social conflicts as interesting as combat. And that sounds easy to do, but like, how do you do that? One thing is to give players lots of roles and opportunities. Again, the factions really, the Yojimbo thing really plays into it. If players have multiple groups to interact with, they can sort of gauge like how they want to trip people up, or like form alliances or betray people, or things of that nature. Another thing is also just like, don't underestimate your player enjoyment just goofing around, just like vibing in a social scene. Like, especially like the secret weapon here is like funny NPCs, and you don't know exactly how players are going to respond to NPC, but like somebody, I know with my players, if I do like, hey, I'd be a pirate, like if I do that like pirate voice or like a goofy voice, my players like, we love this NPC and we will kill for them. Like they are our little blorbo now, and we will do whatever it takes to protect them. Just some little, I'm a little goblin guy and I'm a baker and I bake with mud. It's like, oh, aren't you adorable? We're going to kill everyone to save you. And like, yay, mud pies for all, that's a thing to help out. And also just like the players just role play. It's like, oh, I'm just hanging out, just talking to an NPC. I remember I was playing in a Fabulous Ultima game, and I just had this like 20-minute conversation where my character met this type of person. I didn't know that this kind of person was like, wait, you're, we're all human, but you're a Minotaur? Like, wait, Minotaurs are real? Like, what's going on here? And I just had this 20-minute conversation, like probably not that long, but it's just like, what's it like? How does this, and it was just for the sake of role play, it wasn't to advance the plot per se. And it was just delightful. It was just fun. So I think those are the key for me, is to make the social stuff as fun as the combat, and figure out what your players would respond to, and always have a pocket blorbo to throw at them that they'll really latch on to. So yeah.
And giving it time as well, because those kind of things don't happen like every time first time, and like it takes time for those conversations to, and like you say, for the mannerisms to come out, and for people to start asking those follow-up questions, and
get the players to talk to each other, like, and just sit back. Like, if you can get them really engaged where they're talking to each other and like really role-playing with each other. Like there was a Delta Green game where the players I spent like 30 minutes where I hardly said anything. The players like, what are you going to do with that gun? I don't know. What are you going to do with that book? And like, and so like the player's like, should I shoot this person? Should I, what are we gonna do? Yeah, and I just like, all right, well, you two figure it out. Like, we can't really do anything. If you think you're gonna have to shoot this person because they stole the book and you have this book that you think you need, like, I don't know. It's up to you. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a balance. I was just going to say that.
You go.
Okay, well, I was going to say that for a GM, I think there's a balance to be struck between supporting the players in role-playing a social situation and a social combat and not putting them on the spot and being like, well, you didn't know the right words to say, so you failed this encounter, rather than allowing them to give the flavor and then calling for a roll. And I've seen that happen before, that people are like, I get a little bit intimidated because I can't do that as a character. And you don't really feel like that about sword fighting or jumping over something, because it's all happening in the theatre of the mind. So I think that's a key thing to remember as a GM, to support your players in describing how they're going to approach a social interaction, giving a bit of a flavour of it, and then supporting them with the characteristics, the attributes, the roles that they've got.
So one thing to look at, even if you don't want to play it per se, there's a really good RPG, Red Markets, which is zombie apocalyptic horror but economic horror, and where you play these freelance mercenaries who go out on jobs, but like they have Red Market has these formalized rules, and there's the second edition quick start out that or public beta that has streamlined these rules. But the idea is you find a client and then you negotiate the terms of this job that you're going to do for them, and like every player gets to do something, because like while one player negotiates, every player says, oh well, on the meantime this player did research to figure out what the client was really after, or what they were really vulnerable to, or like they spread a bunch of rumors to drive up the price of the job, or like sabotage the competitors to make sure they weren't going to get undercut. And so everybody had some kind of thing to do in this social scene, and so like you don't have to use the Red Market mechanics, but this idea of like, give everybody like, all right, you have this important social conflict, this social negotiation, diplomacy, trial, whatever. Everybody gets to do something, and we'll figure out how that works. But like, something like that.
There's a link to Red Markets. We've had a lot of guests come on and talk about Red Markets, and always for like
I think
a
we
different
spoke
reason.
about it a lot
really
when
funny.
Ross was on before. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we had a good long chat about it.
Yeah.
I'm actually getting to play Red Markets tomorrow, so yeah.
Excellent.
So if a GM listening wanted to do one thing to improve how they use locations at the table, what would it be?
Just try to make one thing unique about each location, and it doesn't have to be big. So like give like think of like one thing that the players will remember about each location they visit. Like if they go to a town, maybe there's a weird statue, and it's like a statue of a dog or whatever, and and the players like, why is there a statue of this dog? And like, oh well, he saved our town by barking and alerted us to the avalanche that was coming, or the monster or whatever. Or they go through a forest and it smells oddly, and you're like, well, why does it smell oddly? Well, there's this reason. And like, so if you give just a little bit, there are a lot of forests in the world, there are a lot of towns in the world, but every single one is unique in its own way. So think about like, how is this town, how is this forest, how is this road, whatever it is different from all the others, and just a little bit goes a long way. And so you don't have to change anything mechanically, or come with a lot of stuff. Just add a little detail, a little flavor to each place that make it stand out. The players they'll remember that one weird detail. They'll remember the town with this dog statue, and like they won't remember the plot you spent 6 hours working on, because it was another save the princess. The princess is actually a dragon. We got to blah blah blah. Typical story, but that dog statue, that was a cool dog statue. Like, yeah.
I think it's funny that you pick dog statue, as Andy and I both live in Edinburgh, and we've got multiple dog statues, but we've got like probably the most famous dog statue in the world. Yeah. Greyfriars Bobby, based on, which is a funny name for a statue anyway. And there's a statue of him because I think his owner died, and he was buried in Greyfriars Kirkyard, and Bobby like stayed at his master's grave until his death, and now
Aw.
there's a statue of Bobby. Yeah, he's adorable. He's like a little Scottish Terrier or something, or
Yeah.
West
Aw.
Highland Terrier. Can't remember
Yeah.
what.
That is
But
adorable.
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
and he sits up there, and he's got a little fountain, and but tourists rub his nose for luck, but they shouldn't. They're constantly being told, like, please do not rub poor Greyfriars
Aw.
Bobby's nose, but he's got like a shiny nose. Yeah.
Aw.
It started like maybe 20 years ago. They started doing it. They never used to do it, and it's damaging it. They've had to repair it, and yeah.
Yeah,
Aw.
poor
So if you come
Greyfriars
to
Bobby.
Edinburgh, visit Greyfriars Bobby, but don't rub his nose.
I'll put this first on the list. I do want to go to Edinburgh Fringe someday, so yeah, it is on the list
You
of places
should.
to visit. Yeah, I've been to Adelaide
Yeah.
Fringe, but like, yeah.
Well, let us know if you're coming over. We'll take
Yeah,
you
yeah.
out or something.
Oh,
I'll
for sure.
take you on a tour of the dog and bear statues. There's also a
Ooh.
bear called Wojtek, who's an anti-fascist bear, and
Hell
his
yeah.
nose is getting a
best kind
bit
of bear.
shiny too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I
He's
was
the best kind of
actually
bear.
the thing I saw this news. I don't know if you saw it, but I don't remember exactly what it was. There's a viral video a couple years ago of 4 guys at the storm drain, and they all hold hands to rescue a dog, and they pull the dog out of it, and like they just unveiled a statue of these 4 guys pulling the dog out of this storm drain, and so like that's what I was thinking of. But yeah, we love dogs. We're of course we're going to build statues to them, but like yeah, did this dog deserve a statue? Like, well, you can make up a unique reason for your game, but yeah. Dogs, they're neat.
Dogs are neat. Very
no,
few cat statues. We need more of those.
Mm.
Except on Nelson's column, 4
Yeah.
lions.
Yeah. As soon as Ross started talking about adding those little details, I remembered from Lawhammer, Lindsay, the village we went to, where like everything was like really like shitty and decayed, but there was the person who made like the little like doll things. I don't know if you remember. And
Yeah,
it was just like really, and then they offered us you could stay in our hovel, and we were like, yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, see, dolls, scarecrows,
Yeah.
it's fine. It's a sign
Yeah.
of a good village if you
Yeah.
have lots of little.
Yeah, this wasn't a good village. This was very,
Oh, it
very
was a
much
weird
not a
thing.
good village. Yeah.
And well, we've actually reached the end of our stream, so thank you again, Ross. You always make it so easy to fill an hour, and we get to the end and we're like, oh my god, I can't believe it's 8 o'clock already. So next week I don't know if we'll be on properly next week. Andy Law and I are away, but we will have an Inside the Rookery. It might just be from a slightly different date, time, or location. So watch this space or the Discord server or the Patreon for more information. Thank you as always to all our patrons who continue to support our streams, and everyone who was in the chat. And of course, thank you to Ross for coming and being a wonderful guest again.
Yay.
Yay! And we will see you next time. Until then, all that remains to say is good night and caw-caw, caw-caw. See you soon.